What do you take away from your experience as Chief Inspector of Hospitals? What do you think is the biggest problem facing the hospital system that you've personally witnessed?
Well, I think the stories coming out of Shrewsbury and Telford last week really typify the problems that the NHS is dealing with. And it's a problem really of culture. There's a great article in the Sunday Times yesterday by Matthew Sayed talking about the theology of the NHS and the fact that it's very resistant to challenge. And what I've been doing over the last 5 years as Chief Inspector of Hospital is providing constant challenge to the system. And sometimes it responds well, but in many cases, there's a defensive response. People don't want the challenge. They want to fight back. I describe this as deny, deflect and blame. First of all, they say there's no problem. If they can't hold to that, they'll try and deflect the problem onto something outside their control. And if that doesn't work, they'll try and find someone or some part of the system to blame. But actually what we want from the NHS is for it to accept its shortcomings and to deal with them. And where you see really good leadership in the NHS, you see exactly that. You see leaders, you see services that recognise they don't get everything right and spend every day trying to improve and learn when things go wrong.
Is there a whistle?
The NHS isn't good enough for learning when things go wrong at the moment.
And is there a promise or a whistleblowing problem here that it's actually people don't want to listen to whistleblowers?
Well, that's part of this culture in that anyone raising concerns is dismissed, and part of that is, part of it is patients and families, and just let's pay tribute to the families that raised the concerns and have been fighting for many years to bring out the problems at Shrewsbury and Telford. There are other families at other units in the country doing exactly the same, and more power to them in getting their concerns listened to. But it's also about staff, because the staff, of course, are seeing every day the problems they have to deal with. And that creates real tensions for staff, because staff want to achieve the best for their patients, but they see problems and they know their own fallibility and the system's fallibility. But it's very difficult for the system to accept that and admit to it. So when staff raise concerns, they often get this very defensive, very negative reaction to that. So whistleblowers do not get a good hearing in the NHS. One of the things that's been really good during the pandemic, during the terrible times of the pandemic, has been that we, CQC, got a lot more people raising concerns directly with us. And I think I'm very grateful to all the people who did raise concerns with us, the whistleblowers and patients who raised concerns with us, because that enabled us to target where action needed to be taken.
Do you think the regulation is very clear to people? I've studied a little bit the various regulatory bodies that work on behalf of the NHS. It's not a clear picture. Do you think there needs to be a much more straightforward, both for whistleblowers and for complainant patients, to be able to say when something goes wrong, here's the body I can go to get redress, to raise concern, to make practices change? It's not at all straightforward, that process in this country.
No, I think you're entirely right, Stick. There's numerous regulators of healthcare in this country, and it is a very confusing picture for them as much as for staff or patients. So I do think regulation is over complex and needs to be streamlined and simplified. And one of the things I've been doing over the last 5 years is to try and get the regulators to all work together so they work in a coordinated way, and I think is really important. One of my frustrations as Chief Inspector has been that when we've seen whistleblowers not listened to, and sometimes where they've suffered detriment because they've raised concerns, we haven't been able to legally intervene in that state. And one of the things I was trying to do was get the regulations changed to give the regulators powers to intervene if whistleblowers are not being listened to or they were suffering detriment. That we didn't manage to get that change in before I left because of the pandemic delaying everything. But I'm still very keen that regulatory change should come about.
And just finally, Professor Ted Baker, do we need to stop deifying the NHS so we can have rational conversations about it? We had a conversation last week and someone threatened to never listen to Times Radio ever again because we said that the processes in the NHS weren't working perfectly. This is Matthew Sayed's point as well. We need to actually get into the system and be able to criticise it, don't we?
Well, look, Stig, I started in the NHS in 1973. I've been working it for nearly 50 years. No one is more committed to the NHS and its ideals than me. But for anyone to refuse to listen to criticisms of what the NHS does, I think is a big mistake. Unless you learn when things are not right, to put things right, we will never improve. And I think deification, if you want to call it that, but the NHS should respond positively when it's challenged about services. It shouldn't respond defensively. And that happens in individual services. It happens in the NHS as a whole. The NHS needs to be open to challenge. And that's what I've been trying to provide for the last 5 years. The good services are open to challenge, but there's still too many services that react defensively when they're challenged about their care.
Professor Ted Baker, thank you for joining us today.